Let's get started. So good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Tammy Brophy and I lead on the school's Africa initiative at Oxford Said. My role focuses specifically on supporting a greater representation of students from Africa to come to Oxford. This is done through increasing accessibility and access to funding opportunities. But I also focus on ensuring that when you come to Oxford, that there is content within the curriculum and within the wider community that really relates to Africa. So our aim at Oxford is that we truly want to be able to support the next generation of African leaders with the opportunity to share both your insights, your experiences, your knowledge with the wider Oxford Said community and with students and alumni from the globe. So I am joined today with my colleague, Elena. Elena is part of the admissions and recruitment team and focuses specifically on supporting students through their admissions journey. So Elena, if you'd like to say a little quick hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Elena. I'm one of the senior advisors in the MBA recruitment and admissions team. And today I'll be answering some of your questions later on in the webinar.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Elena. So as Elena said, please feel free to send through any questions that you have using the Q&A box, not the chat function. But if you have any audio issues, please do let us know through the chat function. I'm also joined today with a few of our MBA students. I'll be introducing them a little bit later on. We'll be running a bit of a panel where you can sort of hear more about their Oxford experience and insights today. They are still quite new. They only joined a few weeks ago. But they can also share some insights in their admissions journey. So I will bring them through the panel towards the end. And if we have any time at the end, I'll also take some questions from the audience. So get your questions ready or feel free to send them through to Elena now and she'll answer them as we go along. So obviously the purpose today is both the Oxford MBA and our Africa initiative. And as you all know, Africa is becoming an increasingly important region on the global stage. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. We know that the opportunities that exist across the continent are endless. However, many African countries also face some unique, issues around sort of economic, political, and social environments and challenges. So to be able to both access the opportunities and also navigate those challenges, there really is a need for greater leadership, both within government and business. In fact, more and more, we're seeing the significant role that business plays, both in society, especially when addressing some of the most significant challenges in the world. So for us at Oxford Said, we really believe that the Oxford MBA plays a significant role in helping students develop as responsible leaders and also assist them as they navigate the rapid changes within African markets. And that is why our Africa initiative is so important. So before we get started, just to provide a bit of context of the Africa initiative, back in 2014, we made a pledge to have at least 10% of our class coming from Africa. When you compare that to other international programs, most programs have on average only about 2% of their class coming from Africa. Therefore, we were really making a significant commitment to increasing that aim to something as strong as 10%. And we do this because we really believe that our students, our African students specifically, bring in some unique and direct insights into an exciting range of emerging economies in Africa, but also educate the non-African students about the opportunities on the continent. So following that pledge, we became very purposeful in our recruitment to ensure that we could increase accessibility to a very broad range of African prospects. We host a number of events across the continent. We host webinars like this. And we also have created a number of dedicated scholarships for our African students, which I can chat a little bit more about. So what is the Africa Initiative? In essence, like I mentioned, it's about increasing access for talented individuals that would like to consider studying at Oxford. Since 2017, we've had over 10% of our class coming from Africa. In the current cohort, we have 11% of our students. But more importantly, it was how do you focus on diversity within that African number? So we have 10 different African nationalities, for example, within that, and we have 54% of our African students are women. So ensuring that when you come on the program, you have a very Pan-African experience and insights, and not just from a handful of countries. Fortunately, we couldn't have all the students joining us today, so we've just got a couple of those students. But if you follow through our social media channels, you'll be able to see more on the different profiles of those students. As also mentioned, though, it was very important to ensure that we had content that is relevant to those students, both African and non-African students, to gain insights into the different economies and markets within Africa. So we run 2, for example, dedicated Africa modules, where if you are interested in learning more about doing business in Africa, understanding both the economic and political environment within Africa, you can take those electives. One of them is actually our international elective that we run, where we take a large group of students that go out to Africa and really immerse themselves speaking with thought leaders, individuals, entrepreneurs on the ground to get firsthand experience on doing business in Africa. So I highly encourage you, if you're looking to join the MBA program, even as an African student, there's a lot of sort of knowledge and insight that you can gain through those electives. But also then, how do we strengthen and expand the opportunities? So we focus heavily, and through the Africa Alliance Committee, which I'll chat a bit about, but we focus heavily on sort of corporate engagement. We don't want to be seen as an institution that takes phenomenal talent from the continent and doesn't support those opportunities for you to return. So whether you are looking to do the MBA to perhaps take the next step and get some international experience, we work with a lot of companies that are looking to hire students from the continent so that you can retain that Africa focus. Or if you are looking to return to Africa, whether it's back in sort of, employment or looking to do your own startup, we try and facilitate those opportunities for you to do that as well. So we created something called the Oxford Africa Business Alliance. So the alliance is what you would imagine as a traditional, in other business schools, traditional student clubs. But what we did was we formalized this group together. So it's a partnership as opposed to a standalone student sort of group. It's a partnership between students, alumni, faculty, and staff, and we work collectively to drive the Africa initiative. One of those activities is very much around outreach, and so that's, I'm thrilled that we're joined by some of the students that are part of the committee as well. And we represent the voices of the members. So as a student, you can join the Africa Alliance and work with that committee to really drive some of the activities, events, networking opportunities, workshops, mentoring programs, to really be able to learn from each other and your peers across the globe. I'd also mentioned we made a significant investment in scholarships. So this year, over 60% of our African students received a scholarship. We really recognize that funding can be a significant barrier to being able to access an MBA at Oxford. So we really have done our part in ensuring that we can both bring in external donors and fund through the Said Foundation at the business school to ensure that, that funding is not one of those barriers. And so you'll be able to hear from students on sort of their funding opportunities that they've taken as well. And then something that's very new, we've also introduced an Africa Academic Visiting Program. And that is where we work with institutions based in Africa and different faculty and academics that will come spend time in Oxford, and will be to work on, say, research, but also be able to engage with the students and share those academic insights. So at Oxford, we're very much around how can we learn from Africa as opposed from telling people in Africa how to do things. And that is the essence of what we're doing. Everybody asks me, why do you have the Africa Initiative? And for me personally, I'm from South Africa, but a very key component of this is how do we educate non-African students about the opportunities that exist? And it's been a huge success in terms of driving some of the perceptions that people may have around doing business in Africa. And for us, it's about how do we ensure that if anybody is considering studying at a place like Oxford, that you have the means and opportunity to do so. So moving on to the MBA program in a little bit more detail. So our program is a one-year program that starts in September of each year. We take essentially everything of a 2-year program and compress it into a 1-year program. So it's very intense, as I'm sure the students will be able to share already. But the benefits of that is obviously there's lower opportunity costs. You're away from work, from your jobs for a much shorter time. And that intensity that you experience, although it may be challenging, those skills that you develop, both the personal and technical skills that you develop within that intensity, is extremely valuable. So although it is an intense year, I think people definitely reflect on that year and have takeaways that they weren't expecting from their time in Oxford. It should be a transformational program. So we encourage you to have an understanding of what you would want to get out of the MBA, but we fully expect that there are going to be students that come in thinking one thing and utilize the MBA and the networks and the faculty groups and their peers to really accelerate their thought process. So what does the year look like in a snapshot? This will be for the MBA year starting from next year. So our MBA goes through different reviews every year. So some of our students that will be joining this may not see this as their exact timetable. But from next year, our MBA is going to be structured slightly differently to allow students to focus on more detailed pathways. So obviously in the first term, you focus very much on your core modules. So everything from accounting and marketing and analytics and business finance. And it really is around giving you the tools to be able to hold yourself in any situation, within any environment, within board meetings, and really to understand, the business landscape from top to bottom. But within the second and third terms, so within Hillary and Trinity, it's really where you'll start to personalize your MBA. You can do a deep dive in finance, for example. You could do a deep dive in consulting and strategy. You could go down marketing and private equity, real estate, whatever it is you would like to get out of the MBA. So although it is a general MBA program, it gives you that ability to really hone into sort of the areas that you would like to focus on post MBA. There is, though, the opportunity to sort of be slightly undecided. We have a number of students that are looking to pivot and perhaps are not sure if they would like to change location or industry only. And so having these electives will allow you to get a taste for some of those different opportunities to see if it is something that you would like to pursue. And then in our long vacation, which is our summer term, it's where you have the opportunity to do an internship. So a number of people always ask us, do you still have an internship? It's a 1-year program. How do you fit it? The answer is yes. We always have an internship as an opportunity. So you can choose to either do an internship for credit. You can do a strategic consulting project, which is where you work in small groups and you work with an organization to address an issue. Perhaps a company is looking to scale or expand into a different market or bring in a new product. You can work directly with that company, or you can stay on in Oxford to do more electives. The internship is very useful if you are looking to, again, pivot, whether it's just industry or location. And you can work in collaboration with our careers team. We have another number of companies that will promote different internship opportunities that you can apply for. And then throughout the year, as I mentioned, you can do deep dives in different areas. We have some co-curricular activities. So these co-curricular activities are for people that are focused in one of these 4 areas. So again, mentioned finance. So we bring together, it's both the practical and theory merged together, bringing in companies that will able to bring practical insight. You'll be able to work directly with those organizations and our faculty. You could do the consulting development program if you're interested in consulting, the impact lab, which obviously focuses on impact investing, and then the creative destruction lab, which has a very strong AI tech focus. So if you are interested in one of those sectors, highly recommend that you look into the co-curricular activities. They don't count for credit, so you don't necessarily do an assignment that goes towards the final grade of your MBA, but it is very useful, as I mentioned, for people looking to work in those areas. And then throughout the year, you also have access to a talent development program that will hone in on more of your sort of, the soft skills that you would like to focus on, whether it's presenting or negotiation, or your interview skills, and working directly with our careers team there. And then just to highlight, as I did mention, we have our international electives. So the international electives take place during the break between our second and third term. One of those key electives, which is extremely popular, is our Africa international elective, but we do have other electives, including the FinTech elective and others that we're looking to introduce as well. This is just a snapshot of some of the electives. If you are particularly interested in understanding what electives are on offer, these obviously evolve and change on an annual basis. So there's always a few new ones that come through. Just to highlight, we have the politics, economics, and the context of business in Africa, as well as the doing business in Africa elective that you can take. But as you can see, it's everything from finance to entrepreneurship. You can do an entrepreneurship project. You are very focused on either investing in entrepreneurial ventures or post MBA. So what does the class profile look like? So this is the current cohort that has just recently started, class of 334. You can see it is very diverse. 97% of our class are national, 63 countries. I mentioned that we're focusing on African students, but as you can also notice, we have GT and hierarchy and then on the actual MBA cohort. So we're very proud. It's the first time we've ever had 50% above female students on leading business schools and very sure this is a commitment to very support an MBA program that it really aligns to our gender initiative that we're in a number of years. And our work ranges in averages. So this is just to give you an idea of what the ranges look like. And so these are atypical kind of student thing, averages, always sort of skews the kind of student we're looking for. We're essentially trying to look at candidates that understand why it's not about the MBA and in the middle of the application diversity. So look at everything to academics, to work experience, to experiences. There's one typical type of student that comes through in terms of the common denominators across. So when students understand and within. So we're working for a big organization, we're focused on your own startup, understand what responsibility you are is what we are for. This is the same of our students. So very diverse. We have range students literally all ranges of traditional financing consulting models. This is always to get a little bit snapshot, but even if you're very non-traditional in the what candidates what they because it's how you learn from each other and within those industries that are very important for us. In terms of careers and what we're going to do post, yeah, we have components on the website, so if you have a little bit more detailed view of our students and where they are and where they report. But just in terms of the snapshot, you can see in terms of what opportunity the MBA brings. So 80% students switch sector post MBA. We've had 66% that have changed education. From Africa to Europe, US, to return to Africa years later. The MBA does create sort of opportunities and networks, both through the diversity of the cohort, but in terms of our diversity of our outreach. We have, for example, on campus who were very focused on recruiting students from the MBA program, but obviously with a very specific focus on Africa as well. But we have a number of recruiters.
Sorry. Just wanted to say the sound is a bit broken, I think, for me and for other participants in the webinar. I just received a few questions in the Q&A box. I'm not sure if it's maybe your internet or...
No, it might be. Can you hear me now? Is that any better?
Yes.
Is that better? Okay. Apologies for the sound. It might be the internet, but okay, great. And then obviously just looking at those that have switched, so what we would refer to as triple jumpers, you can switch both location and function and sector, and 27% of our students have changed all three. And then just to have a look at where those students are landing, we have obviously a very strong focus on finance and consulting, but technology is very up and very much a growing sort of market and industry for us. And obviously we also have global industry and impact, which supports students in a broad range of different industries. Okay, and then just to chat a little bit about colleges. So all students belong to a college. It is the essence of Oxford. And when you belong to your college, essentially it's your connection to the wider Oxford University. You will be able to interact and engage with people from completely different disciplines, whether it's somebody studying anthropology or computer science or history, and you do that through different events, so formal dinners, social activities, different ceremonies, and you can really utilize that opportunity to expand your network from just the MBA cohort to across the university. It's also essentially your pastoral care in a way, so it's where you can choose to live and eat and sleep and everything. But in essence, it is your connection to the wider university and makes something that's very unique at Oxford. So focusing on your application requirements. So when looking at this, as I mentioned, we review applications holistically, but there are some core criteria that we look at. So you need to have an undergraduate degree, you need to have a GMAT or GRE. We don't have a preference, so you can select either or, whether you would prefer to do the GMAT or GRE, it is up to you. And then you need to have at least 2 years work experience. But I think to focus a little bit more on that in terms of what we look for from work experience, it's less about sort of, we're not necessarily saying you have to have worked for a top firm, in a global market. What we're trying to understand is, what do you bring to the classroom? People always will ask me, how do you assess professional experience? And what we're assessing is essentially how valuable and insightful will you be to your peers? And that is what is very important for us. So the biggest asset of the MBA program is your classroom peers. And so being able to share your insights and your knowledge with each other and make that valuable for each other is what we're essentially looking for. Our admissions team, so Lena and her team, will be able to also assist on, reviewing your profiles and your CV. If there's anything that you would like us to sort of get an understanding for you in terms of what you bring to the table, we're happy to assess that as well. You also have a requirement to bring in at least 2 references. So we personally recommend that you use professional references, but we do also allow an academic reference if needed. My biggest piece of advice around references is very much around getting individuals that are invested in you. So we recognize that perhaps you're not able to have a conversation with your current employer, so identifying a colleague or a peer that would be able to provide a letter of recommendation, but somebody that's prepared to write a comprehensive letter of recommendation that's able to speak to, again, what do you bring to the table? So telling us that, you have great communication skills or you work well within a team are really good things to hear, but we need examples. So make sure that when somebody is talking about you as an individual, they're able to essentially back it up with examples that come through on that. You'll also be required to complete an online assessment. So that's a video assessment. You receive the link once you submit your application. You'll receive a link within 24 hours. And through that online assessment, you will be essentially asked questions around, so why is the MBA a key focus for you? What is unique about Oxford? And for us to get a better understanding of who you are, why you would like to do the MBA, and how it fits into your career aims. And there is also then a question around sort of, as I mentioned, sort of the competency-based questions around, give me an example when, for example. So there's a range of different questions. You'll have some time to prep for them, but it is a video assessment that comes through. And then you also need to provide a supporting statement. So that's your personal statement. It's an essay. It's very much, again, is there anything that you would like us to know that perhaps hasn't been captured through your application? So we're not looking for you to sort of, retell us your career aims or your background, but telling us something about you as an individual, something that you're either proud of, a challenge that you've overcome, or something in addition to your career that you would like to showcase through something that's been perhaps an extracurricular activity. You can utilize your essay for that. And then finally, you need to prove your English language proficiency. So this is essentially a UK Home Office requirement. And within the application, you'll have the opportunity to demonstrate how you use English in your day-to-day life. So how individuals that you speak with in English, how you have to write in English and listen within English. So that's all part of your application as well. And then these are our stage deadlines. So if you are looking to apply for this year, welcome, and we look forward to receiving your application. But perhaps you're in the beginning of your journey and trying to understand, perhaps, is the MBA for you? Our stage deadlines get announced in about June, July of each year. They generally stay the same. This year we've had a bit of a shift. We went from 4 stages to 3 stages, but we do expect that the stages would roughly remain the same each year. So if you are looking to apply, and funding, which I'm going to chat about in a minute, is of significant importance, I encourage you to apply in stages 1 or 2, whereas that's where the vast majority of our scholarships are awarded. So definitely submit by stage 2 if you would like to be considered for our scholarship opportunities as well. And then, as I mentioned with scholarships, this is not the full list of scholarships. I've just highlighted a few scholarships that either have a very specific focus on Africa and are exclusive for our students coming from the continent, or alternatively have a very strong focus on either impact or emerging markets. We have a range of scholarships. All of these are on the website. For the vast majority of our scholarships, you will be automatically considered if you hold an African nationality. So by virtue of holding a passport, you would be considered, and there isn't anything else that you need to do. We'll look at your application, your interview, and award scholarships based on either academic merit or potential. And I'll chat a little bit more in terms of what we look for. But there are a few scholarships, for example, like the Oxford Gracelake Scholarship, the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Scholarship, which do require some supplementary documents with it. So an additional essay or answering a few other questions. All of that is built into the application itself. So as long as you submit that with that application, you'll be considered for those scholarships. There are some scholarships, for example, like the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Scholarship, that has a very strong focus on emerging markets. So although it's not exclusive for Africa, we do tend to have a handful of those scholars are from Africa each year. We have the Laidlaw Scholarships. The Laidlaw Scholarship is available for women that have financial need. Again, by natural sort of virtue of some of the economies in Africa, we tend to have a few of our Laidlaw scholars are coming from Africa. We have the Skoll Scholarship, which focuses on social entrepreneurship. So if you are working within a social venture or aim to work within your own startup post-MBA that is very impact focused, again, strongly encourage you to apply for the Skoll Scholarship. And each year we tend to have at least 1 or 2 of our scholars that are from Africa as well. Then if you are interested in the 1+1 program, I just wanted to highlight the Pershing Square Scholarship. So the Pershing Square Scholarship is for students that would like to do our 1+1 program, where you do a master's across one of the many departments at Oxford, followed by the MBA. So you'll do a deep dive in a specific subject area, say computer science or African studies or public policy, and then follow it with the MBA the second year. Pershing Square covers living expenses and tuition fees for both years. So all of these scholarships in general, they range in value. Some are partial scholarships, some are full scholarships for tuition fees, and some include living expenses as well. What I will say though about scholarships is, one, you need to trust the process. So unfortunately, if you would ask us, what are my chances of getting a scholarship, or can I get a scholarship before knowing if I receive an offer, we would always say to you, you need to make an application and go through that process, and scholarships are awarded to candidates after they've been successful on the program. But also to just understand that there is going to be some commitment somewhere, both based on finances and time, but you're investing in yourself, and you need to see the MBA as an investment. So as a school, we will do as much as we can to ensure that funding is not a barrier, but there will be sort of different opportunities for you to explore other funding opportunities, for example, Prodigy Finance, which is one of the loan schemes, identifying and working on potential corporate sponsorship. So, myself and my team are happy to work with you if you would like to explore how do you sort of put forward a case to your company to look at sponsoring you to do an MBA. And then there is the Chevening Scholarship, which is open to certain countries. It's a UK-based scholarship scheme that the UK government issues, and that is awarded to a number of individuals, both across the continent and the globe as well. So in essence, we will do our part, but also recommend that you do as much preparation as you can to identify what are your sort of funding needs and opportunities. Great. So just then in summary, what do we look for in a scholar? The key thing is obviously a strong focus on Africa. For some of the scholarships, you need to be ordinarily resident in Africa. For some of the other scholarships, as long as you just hold an African nationality, you would be considered. We don't necessarily have a preference for one or the other. We're not saying that you have to be in Africa to actually get all the scholarships, but what we are saying is that we want people that have a strong focus on Africa, irrespective of where you work and where you're going to live, and have that desire to give back and really be able to contribute to Africa's economic development. So, really being able to outline what are your plans for the future, where do you plan to sort of have impact. That is essentially what we're looking for in the dedicated Africa scholarships. And then we also look for individuals with really strong communication skills, with strong academic merit or potential, and being able to really be able to contribute to the class as a whole and be an ambassador for Oxford, both as students and then when you become alumni as well. Right. So I am now going to hand over to our students, and would love for them to now turn on their videos, and they can unmute themselves. And I will stop sharing my screen now. Great. So if all the students can just quickly turn on their cameras, and we can have a great, perfect. So I'm going to hand over to the students. They'll just do a very quick hello, tell you a little bit about themselves, but what they were doing before they started the MBA. And then I have a few questions to ask them before we have a chance to take any questions from the audience. So Nina, would you like to go first? Oh, and by the way, well, actually, I won't steal your thing. You can tell them also about your role within the Alliance.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Tammy. Okay, my name is Nena Anowai. I'm from Nigeria. And like Tammy mentioned, I'm also on the Africa Alliance Committee. I'm the co-head of outreach. So basically what we're focused on is getting more African students into the MBA. Basically that's what I do on the Africa Alliance. In terms of what I was doing before the MBA, I started my career in KPMG. I was a tax consultant, focused on compliance, regulatory, and advisory for like clients in different industries. And I did that for about 4 years. Then I left and I went to ExxonMobil, where I did financial planning and analysis, controls, budgeting, planning, forecasting, that kind of stuff. And I was doing that for 3 years before I came for the Oxford MBA in September.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. Should we jump over to you, Yemi?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yemi. I'm Nigerian. So prior to the MBA, I had engineering undergrad, so studied computer science, worked in tech and strategy in a non-bank financial services company in Nigeria called ARM. And then I worked with a VC fund focused on Africa called Telcom for about 3 years before joining the MBA program at Oxford.
Right, perfect. And then should we go over to you, Kudzai?
Hi everyone, my name is Kudzai. I'm from Zimbabwe, and before the MBA, I was in Oxford last year doing a master's in energy systems. And yeah, prior to that, I was doing chemical engineering.
Perfect, great. And then Kelvin, over to you.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Prior to the MBA, I was working as a business analyst for tech projects, robotics process automation across several banks in Nigeria. Started my career with Guarantee Trust Bank and worked all the way to First Bank. And beyond that, I started my own business called 56 Capital, doing impact investing in Nigeria, agricultural sector and logistics. Thank you.
Amazing, great. So as I said, I've got a couple of questions. I won't ask you all the same questions, but let's just perhaps start on getting an understanding to what attracted you to Oxford, Saeed. So Nene, maybe if you just want to give a few points on sort of what attracted you to the school and what do you believe separates Oxford from other schools?
Okay. First of all, it's Oxford, I mean. But aside that, I think what really attracted me to the MBA is the focus on like impact. So a lot of MBAs talk about like businesses, capitalist nature of the business, how it's cut through and all that. But in addition to that, Oxford also adds the fact that businesses can also focus on impact. So there's a lot of focus on sustainability, and that cuts across even the curriculum as well. So I think that's one thing that I would say is really different in the Oxford MBA. And also that's what attracted me to the MBA.
Amazing, great. And Kudzai, then the same question to you, if you maybe just want to tell us a little bit more about sort of, what were some of the things that attracted you to the program?
Okay, yeah, sure, I can go with that. I think for me, I was in Oxford last year as well. So my initial attraction to Oxford was to study the energy systems, which is like an interdisciplinary course. But I think it also speaks to the MBA as well, because during that course, we had exposure to MBA professors who were actually coming on my course, and they were able to talk about the MBA as well and how energy systems is linked to business. And that's how I first got my first introduction to the business school, and then I ultimately looked more into the business school. So I think the way the business school is interwoven with different departments across the universities, I think it's a good selling point for the MBA. I think most other MBA programs are standalone programs that kind of do their own thing and are not really intertwined with the wider universities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is the key thing that sort of separates us, that you get a far wider experience and a bigger network as well. And then I think, Yemi, if we could maybe move to you, just more to talk around sort of the impact of the Africa Initiative and what it has in terms of what that means for the student body. So what impact do you believe has happened from having such a large representation of students from Africa on the wider cohort?
Yeah, so I'll maybe talk a bit about what's happened in the last 1-2 months, just having a lot of African representation. First, I realized there are a lot of people that know very little about Africa, and they're just very interested in learning more. We had a conversation as early as 2 days ago when someone was like, one of the first things you should do is just break up the 54 countries and tell us about them.
Yeah.
There's that. Even it's so interesting that with the student chair, I think one of the co-chairs is African. And there's just a lot to learn about Africa. And even as an African, you know so little about it beyond what you read. So learning from other people's experiences. And as I plan to invest in Africa long term, being able to have so many people from, I think, 10 different countries gives just more perspective into what happens beyond what you see in macroeconomic information, because you understand real people that live here. So that's really exciting for me.
Absolutely. And Kelvin, have you felt, I was talking about the impact of both for African students and non-African students. What have you learned essentially from, your peers from outside of your home country? Sort of what exposure have they given you to understanding the African context a bit more?
Yeah, so it has been great thus far having Africans on the program. One of the greatest impacts is the fact that we're able to share a unique story about Africa, different from every other story that they probably heard about from the media, right? And having to mix with different people and having to meet a lot of Africans has driven things around, talks around social impact and sustainability in Africa. Then you get to see like a lot of people are interested in what's like the African the continent has to offer, right? We've seen a lot of collaboration and knowledge exchange, right, among different parties, right? One of the greatest things is a lot of other people are now interested in driving investments in Africa, which is one of the greatest things that we need right now as a continent, right? So it has been a great experience also representing Africa, right, on this program.
Absolutely. Great. And then I thought I'll ask you all this question, but it's very much around sort of you're very new on the program. You've already started a few classes already, but is there anything that you've either done or really looking forward to that's part of either the curriculum or co-curriculum that you plan to do whilst you're on the MBA? So maybe if we start with you, anything that you've done or looking to do, particularly around electives or curriculum?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, coming from an engineering background, I think things we've been doing so far, it's sort of like using a different part of my brain. So we're doing organizational behavior, which is looking at how we implement all the technology people have, all the finance understanding that people have of businesses, and how you actually implementing that and inspiring people and getting people on your side within your team to do that is actually probably the harder part of trying to run a business. And so that has gotten me really intrigued, and it's actually one of my most interesting courses that I'm doing so far. So that's something I'm looking forward to so far.
Lovely. And then Nena, if you want to just chat about your plans for the MBA, what it looks like for you in terms of electives or co-curriculars.
Okay, so I think one co-curricular that I'm really looking forward to is the entrepreneur. Okay, no, actually that's the core course. Is the entrepreneurship project, right? So I haven't started a business, and I always believe that I'm not entrepreneurial, but I feel like this would be an opportunity for me to try my hand on like starting up a business and see if it's something I can do, something I'm really interested in, and that would also drive the career ambitions I have going forward.
Excellent, great. And Yemi, do you want to add?
Yes, I do. So this is something I've started already. It's the finance lab. And I think everyone should do the finance lab. It takes a bit extra time, but so it's led by this gentleman called John Gillingham, who has a lot of experience. And then what we do is we go through real life case studies where he was often a third party in. And then you're basically able to learn what happened in different types of businesses and learn about what happens at the executive level when making decisions beyond the data. So the first session we had, everyone was absolutely confused at what his answers were. And then he gave this really witty remark to someone saying, look, analysts understand the data, but like executives understand what to do beyond the data. And just it's been probably 3 sessions so far, but they've been some of the best sessions I've had at Oxford. So I think definitely the finance lab.
Amazing. We shall report that back to John. And then Kelvin, anything you would like to add?
Firstly, you make a lot of you mentioned the finance lab because I didn't make it then. Well, and it's a great experience to be in the final lab. But the great thing about Oxford is that it's a wide range of things you can do, right? I just signed up for the asset management class, right? And asset management master class. And I thought I knew a lot about investment and all. And getting into the class, my perception was completely changed, right? It has been amazing being like the fixed market, right? And then having like experts that have been there for over 20, 30 years that have also started their own like asset management firms, teach you on these things, break it down to your level, right? And the patience to teach you, right? And then also get you to do practicals. I think that's been amazing for me, right? I mean, it's called the master class, but then they still teach us, right, at the granular level, right? So it has been good. We just had like 2 classes. And I can't think of being in any other better place.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great. So as I recommend, go through our website if you'd like to have a look at more of the other electives and co-curricular activities as well. But I just wanted to shift a little bit onto the MBA application side. You know, everybody joining us today is most probably at least thinking about doing the MBA at some point. So if I could ask you all, we're going to talk about how did you prepare for your MBA application? You know, not the entire thing perhaps, but any sort of tips or advice around how to identify referees, any advice on preparing for the GMAT, etc. So maybe Nena, if you want to start there.
Oh yeah, sure. So I think for my personal experience, I used about a year and a half to prepare for the MBA program, and that was just because of personal circumstances. I'm not saying it's going to take you a year and a half to prepare, but what I would advise in terms of the GMAT is, prepare early, but I would focus specifically on the references. Tammy mentioned earlier about getting someone that knows you. If you look around, there's definitely somebody that knows you very well, is interested in your progress, and can say a lot of things about you. So it would be very interesting because in my own personal experience, when I reached out to my boss then to write a reference for me, I wasn't sure what she was going to write or how she was going to write it. But like 2 days later, I saw her like seriously typing on her laptop, and I was just curious what she was working on, and she was like, "Oh, there is a reference. There's not any disturbance. She really wants to be sure that I get into the Oxford MBA." And like, she was so committed. I don't think I've even seen her that serious on like her actual job before. So I would say that focus on people that are really interested in your progress, people that are really concerned about your career, really want you to get in, and they would be really interested in going an extra mile to write a good recommendation for you. And then last thing I'll say is, in terms of your personal statement, sometimes, especially as Africans, we tend to undersell the things that we've achieved. So even while you don't think you've done a lot of things, talk to your friends. They would really remember some of the great things you've done, and it's really good to highlight that in your application.
Right, perfect. And should we go, Kudai, do you want to also give any advice for applying?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll give some advice about applying. Just as Nana said, I think focusing on your references to find people who actually have known you for a very long time, I think is useful. Because in my case, I was already in Oxford, so I was required to submit one reference from a professor I was with, so I didn't know them very well. So they just, wrote something very simple. So then I guess my second reference had to be very strong. So it was someone I've worked with for a very long time, even before undergrad actually, and through undergrad I did some programs with them. Even after undergrad I worked with them as well, so they knew me very well, and they were able to write me a good reference letter. And in terms of preparation, I did the GRE, and just as Nana said, I think prepare early, and the best way to prepare for GRE, I think the concepts are things you probably learned in like maths, English in your high school, university career. So I think you should really focus on practicing, sitting down for the whole 3-hour exam, and really do a couple of practice tests just to get used to it. I think that's the bigger challenge, rather than getting the math right or the English right. It's just to do it quickly. So I think that would be my advice around doing the GRE. And there's many references, many resources you can use. And I think if you search Kaplan online, and any sometimes there's a fascination, people want to get the latest book, or I think anything 2020, 2021, 2022 should be fine. And then just I think they basically have the same content. There's practice tests at the end, and sometimes they have online practice tests they have as well. And GRE, once you sign up for the GRE as well, they also offer you, I think, 3 free tests as well. So sign up early and then do some of those practice tests as well.
Right, excellent. And then Kelvin, anything you'd like to add?
All right, thank you. So 2 things. The first will be the application, right? The essays, right? Try to do like self-reflections. There's always something you can write about yourself, right? Do your research about Oxford, right? There are a lot of great resources and information about Oxford when you're writing the essays, right? Show that you're actually really interested, right, in being in Oxford, right? Because from what you write, we can know if it was just a rush to work, or if you really mean it. That's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to talk about is also like the GMAT. I wrote the GMAT, and I'd like to say that whether you're from like a science background or not, I came from a commercial background, you need to believe that you can first pass it, right? It took me about a year to prepare for the GMAT, and why I'm really making emphasis on the GMAT, because I had like a 730, right? And that was being like the top 10% in the world, right? Coming from a commercial background, I first told myself that I know I can do it, right? I kind of learned the techniques of answering like the maths questions, like the essays, preparing every day, right? And then, I mean, I made that score, right? So I know most of them might be afraid of maths and stuff, but you can always do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think preparation is key, really understanding sort of what needs to go into that. And obviously, you know, the GMAT is not the only part of your application or the GRE, but yeah, making sure then you have a balanced application and perhaps GMAT or GRE is not as strong as well. And then Yemi, anything you would like to add in terms of through your admission process?
Yes, I think the first around the exams, GMAT, GRE, I think do your best, but don't let your scores prevent you from applying.
Yes.
Because I know some people get very obsessed with, I want the perfect score. You can balance out your application with other things. Like if you don't have the best score, you don't have to be perfect. Like no one in the cohort is perfect, and there are different things that make everyone in the cohort unique. So just make sure those things stand out. Not everyone tests very well sometimes, so that doesn't mean you don't have anything to add to the cohort. And I think finally around references, and Tammy can probably say more about this than me because I have no idea what my reference wrote, sorry, but Tammy seems to really like it for some reason. So just find people that advocate for you, either in your current role or previous roles, people that you have personal and professional relationships with. So they are very open to going that extra mile. And if you don't have those people yet, you can still start building those relationships now towards maybe January applications. And the earlier they know, the better also, because they get to think about the question. Even if they don't have those answers, they would start to observe how you do certain things towards those answers.
Yes. And that's very true on references. I think the thing, you know, there's good letters of recommendation and then there's great letters of recommendation. And that's what you need to constantly be thinking about in your application. So, you know, having a letter of recommendation that, as I said, gives us actual examples of when you've done something, but it should be a very strong narrative. You know, references can often make or break an application because you could tell us one thing in your career aims, and then when your referee submits their recommendation, it's saying something completely different. So what we're trying to do is make sure that you've chosen well, that you've chosen people that have invested in you, that you've had those conversations with them in terms of who you are, what do you want to bring to the table, and what are your plans post MBA, so that when we read your entire application, it's one solid, constant narrative of who you are, and it just allows us to get a bit of a deeper dive into you. So yeah, spend some time thinking of that. And like Yemi said, you don't actually get to see your letters of recommendation. Your referees will get an automated link and they upload their letters of recommendation there as well. Great. So I just want to take a couple of questions that have been coming through, and I know Elena's been able to answer quite a few of them, but just to sort of jump into some that I think you would be able to answer, and that's around colleges. Seems to be a bit of a constant theme. So perhaps if you just each say what college you're at, sort of, you know, we understand some students have degree or ranges of sort of involvement with their colleges, but if you each just say sort of what college you're in and what has been your experience so far. So maybe if we start with you, because you've obviously been here already before, so you can chat about that experience.
Yes, I'm in Kibo College. I was there last year, so I decided to stay. So I guess it's a good indicator. It's a good college. So I think my college experience, so there's some colleges that have postgrad only and some have postgrad and undergrad. So Kibo has both postgrad and undergrad. I think it's like an even split. Some have a bit more undergrad, some have a bit more postgrad. So I think it's been a very balanced experience where there's many events that happen with the postgrad community only, and then there's events that happen with the undergrad and postgrad community. So I think it's a good way to really meet many different people. And for those who are coming from more STEM backgrounds, Kibo College is typically the one where there's lots of the engineers, computer science, and mathematicians. So if that's the type of community you like to be around, I think Kibo College is one of the colleges where lots of that is happening. So we actually have the Robotics Institute underneath our graduate accommodation. So we see all the robots every morning when they're training their robots in the morning. So it's quite a nice place for people who are STEM aligned.
Perfect. And then Kelvin, your college?
I'm in Green Templeton College. I think we have most of the MBAs there, and they have great food. So I like the college. I don't know so much about colleges, but I just applied for Green Templeton when I was coming in. We also have like a lot of formal events and dinners, so you get to meet like a lot of other students in different disciplines, right? So it fosters that networking and also builds your interpersonal skills when you talk a lot with a lot of people, because I used to be a great introvert when I was coming on the program, but now I can't say that anymore because I'm always out there. So, it's been a great experience.
Right. Yes. So as Kelvin mentioned, obviously, you apply for a college that you would like, or sort of put forward your first recommendation. If you weren't successful, we will then place you in another college. So Nena, I don't know if there's any other sort of college insights that you would like to give.
Yes, so I'm in Jesus College, and it's nice. I mean, it's right, like in the sense of what everybody says your college is nice, so I'm not going to focus on that. But what I'll say is, I guess you don't really have to worry about the colleges. You would eventually get into a college. Yeah, you, like Tammy said, you pick your first choice and second choice, and I think on a broad range, like all the colleges are pretty much good and okay. So you can make your choices based on like what's important to you, accommodation and all those stuff. So, but I don't think college is like a big factor to consider in like your application.
It depends on who you're speaking to and how vocal they are about their college. Great. And Yemi, anything you want to add about your college?
Hi, so I'm in Lineker, which is a graduate-only college. So funny thing is exactly what Nina said. Someone told that to me last year. But in the last 2 weeks of like involvement with the college, I just start to realize that it's probably going to be a very integral part of my stay at Oxford. First, because it's a graduate college, you get to meet with a bunch of really exciting people. I think 2 weeks ago, I met someone who's like the head of an investment team in BlackRock. And so it's exciting people you'd find there. My college is very social, so like they throw a lot of parties. You would work hard, but then you get to play hard also, and also exchange programs. We have a dinner in Cambridge sometime, I think next week. So based on what college you're in, also based on what you're interested in as a person, there are certain colleges that their DNA is tied to some things. And so, for example, Lineker is very sustainable forward. And if you are interested in that, you'd get more opportunities through your college. And sometimes in collaboration stuff you get from the business school, and like because I mentioned about Keble, that different colleges have different things in their DNA, so you can also find what works for you. And even if you don't get your first choice college, all the colleges actually are amazing in different ways. So regardless of what college you end up in, it's still a great college. Some have less money than others, but like Jesus has a lot of money. That's why Nina is smiling. But you'd have a great experience regardless.
Absolutely. And somebody had asked about scholarships. We award the vast majority of our scholarships through the business school. There are some other college scholarships. So if the colleges will look at everybody that applies, if you are successful for one of their scholarships, it means that you become an automatic member of that college. So yeah, it doesn't matter what college you actually apply to. It doesn't increase or decrease your chances of a scholarship, because those are awarded essentially before you're admitted into the college. And so I'm very conscious of time, and there's a lot of questions around people wanting to get access to you, get access to all of our other students. So there is another webinar that we're hosting. It's the 7th of December, I believe, Elena, but it's on our website already. That is going to be a very big student panel. So everyone's asking, like, are they Kenyans, and will we have representatives from all the countries? We will ensure that we have that student panel where we'll be able to have more students that are able to join. Encourage you to register for that. You'll be able to ask all your questions around the different nuances of perhaps their experiences in their country. So please register for that, and you can get the recording as well for that. Anybody just want to do a very quick thing of, somebody wants to know when you all applied, if you perhaps just by show of fingers, did you apply in stage 1, 2, 3, or 4 in your year? Quickly, if you can remember, stage 4, stage 1, stage 3, stage 3. So there we go. So you doesn't really matter what stage you apply in. There's opportunities for everybody to essentially have this as an opportunity. I would like you all, just in a final closing word, to just essentially in 10 seconds, what advice, if you're speaking to somebody right now, that is, should they, shouldn't they apply? Should they take the leap? What final advice would you give them to go out and take that next step? Nana, if you want to go first.
In 10 seconds, I'll say take the leap and apply.
Amazing. Great. Kelvin?
I'll say reach out to alumni. They're always open to speak to you, right, and ask more questions. And I'll say apply at the end of the day.
Amazing. Good say?
Yep, same. Make sure you apply. And I think Oxford alumni and students really like engaging with people. So don't feel scared to just like send a message to someone you see on Facebook, LinkedIn, or wherever.
Exactly. And Yemi, any final words, guys?
Yeah, like you miss all the shots you don't take. So just try.
Amazing. Yep, very true. And so for all of those that are wanting all your contact details, they've just volunteered, go connect them with them on LinkedIn, start that process. But if anybody is very serious about applying, please reach out to myself or Elena. I'm sure Elena will put herself on her video to say her goodbyes. But reach out to our admissions team. You can contact us on Oxford MBA at sbs.ox.ac.uk. I sound like a TV show there. Contact us on that. We're happy to have those conversations. We'll utilize the Africa Alliance and Nena and her other co-head of outreach to ensure that we can facilitate as many introductions and help you along that journey. But do your research, look on the website. And I just want to take this time to thank the students for joining me, taking time out of your very busy schedules already, and to Elena that's helped organize this. And thank you all for attending. So we look forward to receiving your application. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh.
Take care.